Let's go out to San Francisco and talk to Daniel. What's up, Daniel?
Hey, Dr. John, how's it going?
Good, man. What up? Good. I'm doing great.
Good. Well, thanks for taking my call. I'll just jump right into it, and I think there might be a little bit of crossover from the last caller, but interested to get your take on me and my wife's situation as well.
Cool.
So we are expecting our first baby early next year.
Congrats, man. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah. I'm pumped. I'm actually sitting in the nursery right now.
Boy or girl?
We're boy.
Dude, congratulations, man.
Yeah. So with that, obviously comes lots of new experiences, new challenges, new choices, and we'd love to get your thoughts on a conversation that we haven't had yet, but that we know is coming. And we want to make sure we handle it well. And it has to do with both of our parents, and the choice to baptize or not in the church that we grew up in and that our parents are still very active in. So it's a little bit of a hot button issue, but want to get your take on maybe what are some of the best ways to go about that.
I would say it is a hot button issue, and it's not really.
Yeah.
On the surface, yeah, very similar to last call. On the surface, y'all have you and your wife have been together. Y'all both had your independent experiences, and for whatever reasons, you've landed where you've landed. Okay, we want to go to a different church. We don't want to go to church at all. We're not really want to be making decisions for our kid this early, or we are going to do this at this age, but we're going to go to a different building. Whatever the reasons are, you've landed there.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is an incredible time for you and your wife to spend some time both dreaming and being very specific about your boundaries on a host of issues. Because everybody's going to have an opinion when you have a baby. Your parents, her parents have already imagined what their role is going to be. They've already imagined that they're going to be in the delivery room, and your wife's like, yeah, they're for sure not. They've already imagined that, like, I'm going to come over and cook dinner, and you're like, no, you're not. You're good. So, right? So what are those boundaries going to be? You're going to leave your baby? You're going to, that sounded bad. Are you going to let family come over and keep your child while y'all go to a movie or something, right? Let's have some of these conversations, and one of the big ones is going to be, how are we going to deal with our faith heritage, and how's that going to interact with our faith moving forward? Have y'all decided we're not going to baptize our kid, or we are, but we're not going to do it in this particular building? Like, what does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, I think we've kind of come to the decision that we're not going to do the same faith practice that we grew up with and that we were married in, and that, is what we know. But we do want to have some sort of Christian principles, and we're sort of in the middle of exploring, which, denomination, community, what have you, is actually most aligned to sort of our overall, the way we see the world, and what we see is going to be the best for our family and our community. So we're still working through that a little bit.
Okay.
And I think mostly where the question comes from, and listen to a lot of your stuff, I sort of anticipated that might be what you say, but there's been sort of more and more as we get closer and closer to the birth, more sort of subtle hints and, little comments here and there, inviting us to, talks at their church more than they would have ever before, kind of things that sort of, tip the cap that, like, okay, it's coming. They haven't flat out asked us yet or brought anything to the head, but, it's coming. So.
And I would say, absent clarity, without clarity and without very clear boundaries, it feels like an external invasion. They don't have any guidelines. And so what the only guideline they have is, this is happening. We raised y'all this way. Y'all were married this way. You got a kid coming. And dude, we're just not here. Like, are we missing the date? Or, right? They're making the story about them because they have no other information to go on. And so I hope this isn't a controversial statement. Good grief. I really, really deeply honor the faith traditions of my friends and family who've gone before me. And you have to understand that there may be some or all, depending on what faith and what practice we're talking about here, who will see your decision to not baptize your kid in this particular denomination as a move into eternity, right? Yeah. Like the soul of their grandchild might be at stake here. And so I think it's fair to give people with that type of weight permission to grieve and be sad. Because it's not just a perfunctory, like, it's not just like, hey, we get haircuts. It's not that. It's like, man, you got to do this or your eternal soul is in danger. See what I'm saying? Like, there is a weight to that. And so I think having your beliefs and practices, awesome. Be very clear and very respectful. Be very direct and understand that the blowback is bigger than somebody not getting their way.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It does, and I think one thing that we're also just trying to be, conscious and aware of is, especially on one side, the familial connection to that, belief heritage is really strong. So it's probably not only going to, impact our relationship with our parents in some way, but will also probably impact the way that they are seen amongst the rest of their family, or the rest of the way the rest of their family sees us. Right.
That's right.
So,
and what you have to do is you have to let adults be adults. And you have to make your value judgments, and you have to control the only two things on earth you can control: your thoughts and your actions. And here's what we're going to act. Here's how we're going to act. Here's what we're going to do. And then as adults, they get the right to respond however they need to. And that might be them deciding, well, then we're not in a relationship with you anymore. And that will be heartbreaking, and that will be ugly, and that will be messy. But that's their choice that they are making to leave you. And they're going to tell all their friends that our kids opted out of relationship with us because this was the standard we set. And so like I said in the last call, all values have consequences. All of them do.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you have any advice for maybe how to have that? Would you recommend having that conversation earlier when we're still sort of in the murky, kind of unsure phase, or maybe trying to hold off until we've got a little bit more clarity on exactly where we're going, what we're doing?
I think an invitation to ambiguity will create a mess. Meaning, if you call and ask their opinion, they're going to give it to you, and then they're going to be really disheartened when you don't listen to it. Right?
Yeah.
Be much better to go forward and say, here's what I think, here's where we are, here's the choices that we're making. Okay.
But if we've sort of made a decision where we don't know exactly where we're going, but we know we're not going here, is that useful to have earlier to let them process? Or
yeah, I don't see any. I don't know any other way around that is dishonest, because you're letting them believe that they're just waiting at the door for you guys, and you all know now you're not going there.
Yeah,
and people listening will say they don't even have it right. Who cares? No, we all care because we love them, and we want to be people of respect and kindness. I think you might be surprised.
Yeah.
When you say, hey, we are interested in trying out different faith communities. We're going to go to a couple others. We're going to hold off on the baptism and that whole process for a season while we try to find a new home church that's going to be for our entire family. And we love and respect how you guys raised us, and we love that y'all have a place that you call home, both in the present and in eternity, if that's what they believe. Great. But as for our house, we're on the lookout, and we haven't abandoned our faith, or maybe you have. Like, we're moving on from that right now. Whatever the thing is, to be very, very clear, and don't for a second hint that you're inviting them into their input. Right?
Yeah.
And if they're parents, they're going to give you their input. Let them. I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care. And they might tell you, yeah, we did the same thing when we were younger. Or we wish we had asked more questions when we were kids. Or we think y'all are crazy. You're putting the soul of our grandchild at stake. We're going to have to take some time apart. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is this: if y'all go through with some things that you fundamentally disagree with, that you're opposed to, and you do it to try to appease other people, it's going to make the next Thanksgiving really hard to be involved with together. It's going to make the next Christmas very awkward. It's going to make the show up, pop up visit have some extra weight to it. And now we're on the pathway to resentment. And it's not going to be their fault. It's going to be y'all didn't set up the boundaries that you knew to be right for y'all at the beginning. Okay.
Okay.
So there is no way to do this where it's not hard. There is no way to do this where they don't take it as a sign that you are not only rejecting their faith, but you're rejecting them. Okay. That's just going to be part of this conversation. And if it's what you and your wife have agreed is best for your family and for your new baby, then hold your head up high and state your values clearly and your intentions clearly and be respectful as people grieve and they need some space.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah,
make
I think that
sense?
makes sense.
There's just not an
Yeah.
easy way around it, but the only way on the other side of this thing is to go right through it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping once that happens, they've always been respectful of our other choices. That first grandchild, it's one of those big,
Oh, dude.
gap,
Yes.
big life moments. So
Yes.
it's always heightened around it. So,
Absolutely.
but I appreciate your take.
No, you got it, man. And I appreciate you guys thinking through these things. And by the way, the faith issue isn't going to be the only one. Bedtimes, feeding routines, sleep routines, how involved you are versus how much you're at work, how involved she is. Is she going to go back to work? All of those things you're going to get input on. Oh my gosh, you're going to get input. You're going to get some of the stupidest advice ever. And you're going to get some great wisdom from people. Start deciding now, A, what are our values on this side of the birth? And they all change whenever the baby actually shows up. Nobody's going to keep my kid. I'm never letting anyone come. I don't need a babysitter. And then like 3 weeks in, you're like, oh gosh, I will hand this kid off to the mailman if I can just sleep for for a few hours. So you'll have all these ideas. More importantly is come up with a plan for how you and your wife are going to stay connected and actually dig into these issues when they come up. Because it's going to show up around prom. It's going to show up around what school they're going to go to. It's going to show up around, are we going to let our kids have social media or not? All these things it's just part of parenthood. Come up with a structure, a plan for not the final answers, but how are we going to engage in these hard conversations? We're going to go on a date. We're going to go on a retreat. We're going to go get breakfast together. We're going to do a thing together. How are we going to continually come back to one another and say, all right, we got a new one. How are we going to figure this thing out? And that is carving a path that your kids will walk, your grandkids will walk. You're going to be people who don't run from anxiety, who don't run from hard problems, but you join hands and you turn and face them and you walk directly through the middle of them. And that, my brother, is where healing comes from. For you, for your family, for our entire country. It's banding together and saying, here comes the storm. Let's walk directly into it together.